The Franks rise in fire and faith. Clovis takes a warband of tribes and forges a kingdom. He defeats Romans, Alemanni, Visigoths, and with one baptism, he binds his people to the Catholic Church. From battle and belief, the Merovingians carve out the First Frankish Empire. But what begins in glory does not end in strength. The same tradition that crowns their kings, dividing land among every son, shatters the realm into pieces. Brothers turn on brothers. Queens plot assassinations. Civil war drains the blood of a dynasty. By the 7th century, the long-haired kings still sit on thrones, but real power belongs to their servants. The mayors of the palace. The Franks' first dynasty builds the empire. Then they lose it from within. This is the story of the Merovingian Franks and their journey from glory to puppet kings. 481 AD, in the town of Tournai, Clovis, aged 15, becomes king of the Salian Franks after the death of his father, Childeric. His inheritance is small, a war band of Salian warriors, a patch of land in northern Gaul. But his ambition is far greater. Gaul itself is fractured. Roman power is gone, but its memory lingers in cities, bishops, and laws. Around him, rivals circle. Alemanni to the east, Visigoths to the south, Burgundians in the Rhone Valley, and a remnant Roman commander still ruling in the north. Clovis appears like those before him, but he is no petty king. He will rule Gaul. The first test comes in 486 AD at the Battle of Soissons. His enemy, Syagrius, is the last Roman commander in Gaul. The two armies meet. The Franks fight with ferocity, heavy throwing axes, breaking Roman shields. Syagrius is routed, flees south to the Visigoths, and is handed back to Clovis for execution. With one battle, Roman rule north of the Loire is gone. The Franks step into the vacuum, but victory is not enough. To the east, the Alemanni still loom, a confederation of fierce Germanic warriors who threaten Clovis's frontier. 496 AD, the two sides clash at the Battle of Tolbiac. At first, the Franks falter. Clovis's lines buckle, his warriors begin to break. In desperation, Clovis turns to the god of his wife Clotilde, a Burgundian princess who has pressed him to abandon the old gods. He prays to Christ, promising baptism if victory comes. The tide shifts. The Alemanni king is slain, their forces collapse, and the Franks stand triumphant. This vow changes the course of Frankish history. Most Germanic rulers are Arians, followers of a Christianity that denies Christ's equality with the Father. Their Arian faith isolates them from the Catholic majority of their subjects. Clovis chooses differently. He accepts Nicene Christianity, the faith of the bishops, the faith of the old Roman elite. At Rheims, he and 3,000 of his warriors are baptized by Bishop Remigius. By joining the Catholic Church, Clovis gains an ally more powerful than any army: the bishops who hold sway over Roman cities, wealth, and law. Now, he looks south. The Visigoths, powerful in Aquitaine and Hispania, are Arian Christians ruling over a Catholic population. To Clovis, they are both a rival and an opportunity. With papal blessing, he marches against them in 507 AD. At the Battle of Vouillé, the Franks and Visigoths meet. In fierce hand-to-hand fighting, Clovis himself strikes down Alaric II, king of the Visigoths. The Visigoths retreat into Spain, abandoning Aquitaine. With this victory, Clovis seizes the richest lands of southern Gaul. The Franks now control the heart of the old Roman provinces, but the triumph carries its price. 511 AD, Clovis dies in Paris, the first Frankish king to be buried there. By Frankish custom, his realm is not passed intact. Instead, it is divided among his 4 sons: Theuderic, Clodomir, Childebert, and Clotaire. Each inherits a portion, each crowned king in his own right. The dynasty survives, but unity fractures. Clovis unites the Franks, destroys the last Roman shadow, binds himself to the church, and seizes Gaul. Yet even at its height, his realm carries the seed of weakness. The age of conquest is over. The age of blood feuds is about to begin. The Frankish Empire now stretches from the Atlantic to the Alps, but inside the royal family are cutting it to pieces. With Clovis dead, his sons carve up the realm. Theuderic the eldest claims Austrasia in the east, anchored at Metz and guarding the German frontier. Clodomir takes Burgundy in the southeast, rich in vineyards, bishops, and alpine trade routes. Childebert seizes Neustria in the northwest, with Paris and Soissons at its heart. Clotaire receives the remaining central lands, yet Paris itself is too valuable to divide, so the brothers hold it jointly, and inevitably they fight over it. This system preserves the dynasty's bloodline, but guarantees chaos upon the death of any monarch. Briefly, the brothers set aside rivalry. 534 AD, they turn on the Burgundians. King Godomar's realm is crushed. Burgundy's wealth and alpine passes are now theirs. But even here, victory is poisoned. New land means new spoils to divide and new causes for civil war. The expansion does not stop. The Franks press into Alemannia, Thuringia, Bavaria, and Provence. In Thuringia, King Hermanfried is killed, his realm carved up by Franks and Saxons. Bavaria keeps its dukes but bows to Frankish lordship. Provence is taken from the Ostrogoths. The map keeps growing, but the kingship keeps shrinking. The larger the empire becomes, the harder it is to hold under divided rule. Inside the dynasty, blood turns on blood. Clodomir dies in 524 AD, and his 3 sons are meant to inherit. Instead, their uncles, Childebert and Clotaire, have the boys murdered and seize their share. Nephews strangled, cousins betrayed. The Frankish court becomes a theater of fratricide. At the heart of the Merovingian collapse stand 2 queens, Brunhilde of Austrasia and Fredegund of Neustria. Brunhilde, a Visigothic princess, brings Roman learning and fierce ambition to the Frankish court. She tries to rule as regent for her sons and grandsons, tightening royal control and clashing with powerful nobles who resent her reforms. Fredegund begins at the opposite end, a palace servant who claws her way to the throne through charm, scheming, and blood. When her lover, King Chilperic, marries Brunhilde's sister Galswintha, Fredegund arranges Galswintha's murder. The motive is both personal and political. Galswintha threatens to abandon Chilperic and reclaim her dowry, a vast swathe of Aquitaine. With Galswintha dead, Fredegund secures her place as queen, and Brunhilde swears vengeance. What follows is 4 decades of war by other means. Assassins slip into bedchambers. Goblets are poisoned. Armies march as much for queens as for kings. Each woman rules in her children's name. Each tries to secure legitimacy and territory. Each turns nobles into pawns in a dynastic feud. Their personal hatred becomes the hatred of kingdoms. Austrasia locked against Neustria. By the time Fredegund dies, in 597 AD, her son Clotaire II inherits the war. Brunhilde, still alive in her 70s, fights on as regent for yet another generation. But her centralizing hand and endless vendettas push Austrasian nobles to betrayal. 613 AD, they hand her over to Clotaire, who accuses her of murdering 10 kings and has her executed in a spectacle of brutality. By the early 600s, the empire is no longer one. It is 3: Neustria in the northwest, Austrasia in the east, Burgundy in the southeast, each with its own capital, its own bishops, and its own nobles. The Merovingians still wear the crown, but unity now comes only when one branch destroys the others. Conquest gave the Franks land. However, the deeper the empire grows, the weaker its kings become. So the question is, when the rulers of a realm can no longer rule, who steps in to take their place? 613 AD, Queen Brunhilde of Austrasia has ruled as regent for decades, but with her death, the Frankish kingdoms are reunited for the first time since Clovis. But this is not the restoration of old Merovingian strength. Clothar wins unity by making a bargain: power in exchange for survival. 1614, he issues the Edict of Paris. On paper, it looks like reform. Officials punished for corruption, local counts and bishops chosen by their own regions, the church given stronger influence in government. In reality, it is a charter of compromise. The aristocracy gains autonomy, the clergy gains authority, and the monarchy is forced to share its grip. Clothar remains king, but his concessions foreshadow the erosion of royal power in generations to come. For the rest of his reign, he holds the kingdom together through balance, bending to noble pressure when needed, preserving stability by keeping allies close. The crown still matters, but it is no longer absolute. Clothar's death brings his son Dagobert onto the throne. Unlike his father, he rules with confidence. He moves the capital decisively to Paris, anchoring political life in Neustria and turning the city into the symbolic heart of the realm. From there, he pushes outward. In the east, Bavaria is tied to the Franks through marriage. In the north, Dagobert clashes with Radbod of the Frisians, forcing their submission and extending Frankish reach to the North Sea. In the southwest, his armies raid across the Pyrenees into Visigothic Spain, proof that Frankish power can cross mountains as well as rivers. Dagobert continues to strengthen the monarchy's bond with the Catholic Church. He pours wealth into monasteries, especially Saint-Denis, where he plans his burial. Bishops and abbots serve as his administrators and spiritual allies, weaving Christian identity into the fabric of Frankish kingship. 639 AD, Dagobert dies. He has forged the high point of Merovingian power, a vast, rich, and centralized realm stretching from the Atlantic to the Alps. He is remembered as the last great king of his dynasty. His heirs, however, cannot hold what he built. After Dagobert, the Merovingians earn a new title, the Roi Fainéant, the Do-Nothing Kings. Real power begins to slide into the hands of nobles and new figures rising in the palace, the mayors. And the question becomes, if kings no longer rule, who will? The Merovingian crown still gleams with gold, but inside it is hollow. After Dagobert's death, Frankish kings keep the symbols of power, long hair as the mark of sacred rule, charters sealed with their names, embassies received in grand halls. But the symbols are all they have left. Real power is slipping from their hands, and behind the throne, a new figure steps forward, the mayor of the palace. At first, the mayor is just a household manager, keeping accounts and organizing estates, but the job grows. Soon, he commands the treasury, the armies, the courts. By the late 7th century, the mayor is not a servant, he is the master. Nowhere is this clearer than in Austrasia, the militarized Frankish heartland east of the Rhine. Its nobles are fierce, its soldiers hardened. Here, the Pepinid family rises. First, Pepin of Herstal defeats the rival kingdom of Neustria at the Battle of Tertry in 687 AD, making Austrasia the real center of Frankish power. From then on, the Merovingian king is a puppet. Pepin rules in all but name. He even makes the mayor's office hereditary, turning it into a dynasty of its own. His son, Charles Martel, the Hammer, goes further still. Illegitimate but ruthless, Charles fights a civil war to seize the mayoralty. He strips land from the church to fund his armies, binding warriors to his command. Campaign by campaign, he bends the Saxons, Frisians, Bavarians, and Alemanni to Frankish authority. And in 732 AD, he wins immortal fame. At Tours, Charles's infantry halt the advance of a Muslim raiding army from Spain. Abd al-Rahman, the Umayyad commander, falls on the field. Whether or not the battle truly saved Christendom, in the medieval mind, Charles Martel becomes its defender. By the time of his death in 741, the kings are shadows. The mayor is king in all but name, but the contradiction cannot last. Charles's sons, Charlemagne and Pepin the Short, inherit his power, ruling while the Merovingians sit idle. The Church asks the same question. In Rome, Pope Zachary faces the threat of Lombards in Italy and needs a strong Frankish ally. When Pepin the Short writes to him, should the man with the title rule or the man with the power? The Pope's answer is simple: the man with the power. 751 AD, the last Merovingian king, Childeric III, is deposed. His sacred hair is cut, stripping away the aura of kingship. He is locked away in a monastery, and with papal blessing, Pepin the Short is crowned King of the Franks. The Carolingian dynasty is born. The Merovingians do not fall to invasion. They are quietly eclipsed by their own officers, and in the vacuum they leave behind, the Carolingians rise, armed with Austrasian steel, backed by papal approval, and ready to turn a fragile kingdom into a continental empire. Because from Pepin's coronation comes a line that will lead to Charlemagne, crowned Emperor of the Romans in the year 800 AD.